quantitative medicine approaches for addressing various questions in drug development. Our next speaker is Dr. Vladimir Chupakin, and he will be sharing with us how AI approaches are advancing the development and application of physiologic-based PK modeling approaches, which is one of the critical tools that is used in the entire life cycle of drug development. Dr. Chupakin.
Everyone, thank you very much for the invitation. So I'll be talking about AI-driven knowledge management in PBPK modeling. So the challenges and opportunities. Data, high-quality data was a foundation of every single AI, major AI advance. So in computer vision, for example, the open images data set originally containing millions of compounds. In version 1, they had only one label. This is a picture of a cat or a picture of a dog, but in version 7, they have heavy extreme multimodal annotations. What does it mean? So it's a cat sitting on the grass, there's a butterfly nearby, etc. So it means that we predict not just the label, we predict very complex relationships from the image. For AlphaFold, as you might know, I think it would be not possible without thousands and thousands of protein structures available, centralized in protein data bank. And of course, the current revolution we have due to the large AI revolution, due to the large language models, is because the authors, the companies had access to the huge, large-scale, whole internet data sets, and they're saying it's not enough. So basically, current LLM models, big foundational LLM models, contains all possible data available to the humanity. So knowledge management. Some of the things might be basic, but it's more educational presentation. So knowledge management, it's a centralized scientific and organizational knowledge. It's ensure quality through enforcing standards, metadata, and governance. That should be always on the background. It helped to connect data silos through the ontologies, control vocabularies, and knowledge graphs. So all this in combination should help to accelerate decision-making through the AI systems. And of course, on the background, all these help to support the compliance that's required by regulatory agencies. So without knowledge management, organizations remain trapped in so-called knowledge funnel when we spend too much time getting the needed information. My original background, I did machine learning for chemistry. I did a lot of ADME modeling, a lot of bioactivities modeling. And when I started doing more PBPK around 2 years ago, I was surprised because the diversity of the data, complexity of the data in PBPK modeling is on a different level. It's more complex. It's coming from diverse data sources, in vitro assays, in vivo assays, clinical studies, different databases, etc. So it's quite a challenge to put everything together in a machine-readable format. And what I mean machine-readable is, for example, have some information in PDF. Machine can read PDF, but it's not translatable into the actions, right? And the other challenge is the curation, because we have data coming from different sources, different setups, etc. So we need to have standards. So if, for example, do we use the same unit for some PK parameter, etc. So in all this sense, AI can help in all those steps. I put this image on the right just to show you that it might be perceived as a simple one, but actually is a quite complex image showing different behavior phases, several axes, cuts, etc. So this example, it it looks simple, but it's actually quite complex. Yeah. The kind of first step for the knowledge management is to define what is the data. It's like what is the most simplistic piece of information, and those are data models. For example, blood pressure. What is the definition of a blood pressure? What is a possible minimum or maximum value? What is the unit used, etc. So it can be very small. What I mentioned, for example, is already enough to start AI to mine the information correctly. There are a lot of complex markup languages for the PBPK models, for the some simulations, etc. Some of them mentioned here, like SBML, PKC, MOBI, etc. But we personally liked LinkML because it's a YAML-based, it's a machine-readable, and it's a human-readable format. And there is a lot of infrastructure that helps to convert these data definitions into the Pydantic, into the SQL schemas, ontologies, etc. So it's really easy to do when you have, of course, defined data model. This is just a mock-up on the right, just to show how it kind of look like in simplistic terms. Yeah, the biggest opportunities for, like, in my perception, because I do a lot of data extraction, AI can help a lot with the converting plots, PDFs into machine-readable formats. And here's a really simple example. We develop a module in Simulations Plus that's available as a part of Gusta Plus GPT. It's in 2 clickable buttons. You upload the image of a PK plot and you get back the machine-readable or human-readable data. So the data extraction, in a sense, with the AI, it can be streamlined. The cost of digitizing, like, for example, one document can be a fraction of a cent. So it's definitely a revolution for the data extraction. But it's not ideal. There are challenges. Some AI-based extraction prone to the errors and hallucinations, and even heavily fine-tuned, you can still bump on some issues. Here's a really simple example. So when we were developing module for table digitization, we found out that the OCR, a vision large model, VLM so-called, it was specifically designed, tuned for the table PDF digitization. And it's working nice actually for even documents from a 15th century. But it bumped on a simple example that, like, you can see the table on the left, it's a PK parameters for the drug, and except mouse, the drug was administered in oral and IV, but almost half, for whatever reason, dropped the second column. We don't know why, but still, the human validation is required for any data extraction task. Of course, it's the model itself can be fine-tuned heavily for plot digitization, for table digitization, specific for the domain, but it's time-consuming still and require quite an effort. Ontologies. So I think everyone here knows what is ontologies, right? So it was, I think it's still popular, with a bit of kind of popularity fading away, but AI can help to create the ontologies. So, and what is ontology? Just ontology is a form of a controlled vocabulary with defined relationship, hierarchies, that is, and also usually the synonyms. So AI can help on every step here. So we can embed synonyms. We can, of course, extract the relation, extract the entities, etc. So, but still, in my perception, human in the loop is needed to validate all those steps. And one of the largest attempts to test AI for creation of ontologies is a Dragon AI. It was published, I think, around a year ago by I think it's a Monarch initiative. So what they tried to do is to create biomedical ontologies from scratch. And they were quite successful for finding the terms and filling the finishing up the relation. So subclass of task is, for example, dog, subclass, mammal, etc. But they had quite low, still in my opinion, acceptable, but low recall. What does it mean? That they were able to extract entities, they were able successfully, highly successfully to fill up those, but they did not find out all of the entities. So it's a win, but not 100% win. So I mentioned data extraction, I mentioned data models, ontologies, but kind of the biggest attempt is to create a knowledge graph. So, and just to kind of for clarity, ontology is a schema, data model is a small piece of the schema, knowledge graph combines everything together and put the information like in a paper, in a database, or ideally in the whole organization into the structured way. So to find all possible relationships. So we can always start with the already available schema, or we can generate it from scratch and run LLM to fulfill the tasks of relationship entities extraction, relationship extraction, etc. And further on, we can use it in AI to query and more accurately and more reliably. So there is still a little bit of challenges. So LLM sometimes misread numerical values, like it switched 44 to 54, 45 to 54, because LLMs are heavily tuned for the human errors in the text. Also, knowledge graph is not always successfully catch all possible synonyms of the entity. For example, the chemical compound, midazolam, right? It's MDZ, verse, dormicum, etc. So sometimes in information you have, it's either LLM cannot see it or it's not available. So the solution is to basically add some form of synonyms explicitly in a form of a database. Yeah, and kind of putting everything together. So we have data acquisition, data normalization, data governance. I didn't mention a lot the last piece, but it's kind of should be always in the background to see like what documents you used, what are the license or documents, how you extract the information, etc. So all those combined used for the AI tools like RAG-based chatbots, AI agents, reasoning AI models. As example, so we have, we developed a GastroPlus GPT, GastroPlus chat. Did I have a whole screenshot? Okay, so GastroPlus GPT, and it's a RAG-based AI chatbot for documentation of GastroPlus. So we validated it using AI-generated but human-validated questions to have a correct answer, and it's working quite nicely. So we also have Assessment Plus AI that is interesting approach when you, based on the same actually RAG, the same knowledge-based, able to help you with assessment of the report with what are the possible next steps to optimize your simulation. Yeah, I'll skip this one. So future outlook. So we think that the AI is developing really fast. Models change every, I don't know, 3-4 months. So, but we always have to think the guardrails by design. So whatever we develop an AI tool, we need to understand what are the safety concerns, uncertainty estimations, etc. So we think that the reasoning layer of the knowledge graph would be a huge development further, so it kind of connect different pieces together. And the evaluation scale, I think that we need benchmarks for PBK modeling, and we don't have a lot of open databases available for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chupakin, on highlighting the various opportunities and challenges in extracting information, organizing them, and managing the knowledge for further advancing PBPK. Our next speaker is Dr. Chi Liu. She is the Associate Director for Innovation and Partnership in the Office of Clinical Pharmacology. She is also the co-chair for CEDAR AI Council and the lead for CEDAR AI Review Rapid Response Team. And she will be sharing with us the role of AI/ML approaches in drug development and regulatory evaluation.
Thanks again, Raj, and good morning, everyone. It's my great pleasure to be here, and thank you for the great opportunity to share with you my views on the application of AI in drug development and regulation. A disclaimer, the presentation here reflects my personal opinion and should not be construed to represent FDA's views or policies. As has been presented by many excellent speakers in the past 2 days, AI brings exciting opportunities in drug discovery, drug development, and patient care. For example, in drug discovery stage, AI can help with target identification, drug design, compound screening, and drug repurposing. During the drug development stage, AI can be used to help with clinical trial design, clinical trial conduct, analysis of the data, generation of the report, and it can also be used to help with formulation design and drug manufacturing, also pharmacovigilance. And for patient care, AI can help us to do a better job at disease diagnosis, prognosis prediction, and treatment optimization. It can also be used for patient monitoring or patient engagement and adherence monitoring. And also at every stage, AI and machine learning can be used for data mining, natural language processing, and knowledge management, as has been presented very elegantly by Vladimir just now. And it's important to note this is not an exhaustive list. In my personal opinion, AI can almost be applied at every step in drug development, drug discovery, and patient care. And it's a transformative force that we all need to pay close attention to. In 2022, my colleagues and I published a paper on a landscape analysis for AI machine learning related submissions at CEDAR FDA from year 2016 to year 2021. Today, I want to show you an updated analysis by including the submissions in year 2022 to 2024. As you can see from the graph here, before year 2018, there's actually very few regulatory submissions at CEDAR that has AI and machine learning. And then in year 2018 to year 2019, there started to have a gradual increase. And then in year 2021, the regulatory submissions had a very sharp increase. It's almost like tenfold as compared to the year before. And the submission number jumped to about 100. And then you can see from 2021 to 2024, there's steady increase of regulatory submissions that has AI machine learning components at CEDAR. And for this year, as Gabriel mentioned yesterday, even though we're still at August, we already received about 300 such submissions. And personally, I think this trend of increasing application is consistent with the broader application in AI machine learning in the biomedical field, and this trend is likely to continue in the near future. And in our landscape analysis paper, we also summarized the types of analysis that AI machine learning was for. For example, AI machine learning is very good at, it's very often used for outcome prediction. For example, they can be used to predict patient's prognosis or treatment outcome based on the baseline characteristics of the patient and the treatment he or she received. And AI and machine learning are also very often proposed for covariate selection and confounding adjustment. As Rob mentioned yesterday, AI and machine learning can be powerful tools for pharmacometric modeling. And they have also been proposed for anonymity detection imaging, video, voice analysis, and they have also been proposed for natural language processing and real-world data phenotyping. We also summarized the common objectives that AI and machine learning is used in those analysis, in those submissions. AI and machine learning, I think everyone knows, they have become a powerful tool for drug discovery and repurposing. Although, generally speaking, sponsors are not required to disclose their AI use in drug discovery. We do see some submissions the sponsors stated either the target identification or compound selection was based on AI or machine learning. And we also see sponsors has been using AI machine learning for drug toxicity prediction. Often this is based on the compound structure, physical chemical properties, or affinity to certain targets. And the AI and machine learning has also been proposed for enrichment trial design. Generally speaking, enrichment trial design has three broad strategies: reducing variability, prognostic enrichment, and predict enrichment. And we've seen sponsors proposing AI and machine learning for all three types of enrichment strategies. We have also seen patients using AI machine learning for patient risk stratification and management, which actually I think you have seen cases that Gabriel presented yesterday. And AI and machine learning has also been proposed for dose selection and dose optimization. And AI-based platforms has been used in clinical trials to monitor and sometimes enhance adherence to dosing regimens. And we've also seen sponsors proposing the use of AI for synthetic control or digital twins. And one very common type of application of AI machine learning is for endpoint and biomarker assessment. And we've also seen AI applications for post-marketing surveillance. And the previous examples are a summary of what we have seen that sponsor has proposed AI and machine learning use in the regulatory submissions. And here, I also want to share with you an example where FDA used machine learning to help with the regulatory decision-making. And this is for the use of machine learning to facilitate patient population selection for the anakinra EUA for COVID-19. In 2022, FDA issued emergency authorization for the use of anakinra for the treatment of COVID-19 in hospitalized adult patients. And in the efficacy and safety data to support this EUA were mostly coming from one single randomized controlled trial, phase 3 trial called SAVE-MORE. And patients in the SAVE-MORE trials were selected based on biomarker cutoff, that is SUPA level higher than or equal to 6 nanogram per ml, intending to enrich the trial with patients at risk for progression to severe respiratory failure. And the SUPA, the biomarker SUPA is a biomarker for inflammation and immune status. Unfortunately, at the time of the EUA assurance, and even now, SUPA assay is not commercially available in the United States. And this presents a big regulatory challenge for us, because if we're going to issue the EUA, how can healthcare providers identify the right patient population for the treatment? And in this case, FDA decided to use machine learning to address this regulatory challenge, to find alternative way to identify patients that are aligned with the patients enrolled in SAVE-MORE trials, which means they will have a baseline SUPA level higher than or equal to 6 nanogram per ml. The idea is to use a combination of patient baseline characteristics as well as commonly measured lab values to predict which patients are likely to have a SUPA level high. And to do this, we leveraged machine learning to identify a scoring system that can help us identify patients with SUPA level higher than or equal to 6 nanogram per ml. And we use the data from the phase 3 trial, SAVE-MORE trial, to train the model to identify the scoring rule. And then we use a separate independent trial called SAVE to validate the scoring system. On this slide, on the left, you can see the scoring rule that is selected and validated by the FDA review team. And based on the scoring rule, we identified 8 criteria for this scoring rule. And if patients can meet at least 3 out of the 8 criteria, he or she is likely to have a SUPA level higher than or equal to 6 nanogram per ml. And this scoring system was ultimately incorporated into the anakinra EUA fact sheet in section 1.1, patient population identification system, patient identification section. And this is the first time FDA used machine learning to facilitate identification of patient population for drug therapy. And at the time of the EUA authorization, as a post-authorization requirement, we asked the requester to further validate the predicted performance of the scoring system using the remaining cohort from the SAFE study. And the additional validation results came back in 2023, and it actually strengthens our confidence in using the scoring system as an alternative way to plasma super test to determine the suitable patients for anakinra treatment under the EUA. Now I'm going to switch gears and talk about the big picture of the CEDAR AI activities. The FDA, including CEDAR, has been proactive in addressing the rise of AI in drug development. This timeline here shows our key initiatives from 2019 to present, including but not limited to various workshops, the formation of CEDAR AI Council, and the publication of the AI guidance. These efforts demonstrate our commitment to staying at the forefront of AI integration in regulatory science. In January this year, FDA published a draft guidance on the consideration for the use of AI to support regulatory decision-making for drug and biological products. As Gibber mentioned yesterday, this provides a risk-based framework for establishing and evaluating the credibility of AI use in regulatory decision-making. It ensures that AI models used to answer regulatory questions are sufficiently credible and supported by appropriate evidence for their specific context of use. Looking ahead, we still have a lot to do. We will continue to seek feedback from all stakeholders and maintain our responsive, risk-based regulatory approach. And we want to continue to advance regulatory science in this area by monitoring the landscape to detect gaps and opportunities, and also to support regulatory research for evaluating AI use in drug development. And we want to also engage and collaborate with everyone in the AI ecosystem, including but not limited to academia, industry, biotech, international regulators, non-for-profit organizations, healthcare providers, and patients. Together, we're shaping the future of drug development and patient care, and I'm very excited about what we'll achieve together. Before I conclude my presentation, I want to thank my colleagues who have contributed to the work presented here, and I want to thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Liu, for providing insights on how AI/ML approaches are being applied in new drug submissions as well as for evaluations. Our next speaker is Dr. Ross Wallenga. He is a senior chemical engineer in the Division of Quantitative Methods and Modeling in the Office of Research Standards and Office of Generic Drugs. And he will share with us how he and his colleagues are employing AI-based approaches for quantifying the critical attributes of oral inhaled drug products. Dr. Wallenga.
It's my privilege to be speaking to you here today. I'll be talking about computational fluid dynamics, otherwise known as CFD, and how these are used for orally inhaled drug products, and along with that, how AI approaches have been impacting this field. This presentation reflects my views and should not be construed to represent FDA's views or policies. So just a little primer for anyone who's not as aware of this area. Orally inhaled drug products, or OIDPs, are indicated for a variety of diseases, most commonly for asthma or COPD, but also for more rare diseases like cystic fibrosis and even the common flu. And for many of these products, regional lung drug delivery is important because the disease presents itself in different ways through different regions of the lung. And there are several different device types that are used to deliver the drug, including metered dose inhalers, dry powder inhalers, and inhalation sprays, which are just aqueous spray formulations. So why might we build a model for an OIDP? So I'm going to be focusing on regional deposition models for this presentation, especially using CFD or potentially semi-empirical methods. And you might want to use this to predict the impact of device or formulation changes prior to doing in vivo or in vitro testing. And so this may accelerate your product development by avoiding unnecessary testing. For generic OIDPs in particular, I'm in Office of Generic Drugs, so we tend to focus on this area. Modeling may be used to justify biorelevant bioequivalence limits for relevant in vitro studies. In other words, if you have, say, a particle size distribution test and your test product is falling a little bit outside the limits, you may be able to show that when that difference propagates downstream to the delivery to the lung, it may not actually be that significant. So you can potentially widen limits using modeling. And there are also physiologically based pharmacokinetic or PBPK models, and we can use this to understand relationships between PK and regional absorption. And this can help us make decisions about product development based on PK data. And something we've been doing internally lately is looking at the need for a charcoal block study and what, if we need that, and if we do, what might be some useful alternatives. And so the focus here is on CFD modeling. So just a little primer on what this actually is. This is a physics-based model that allows for prediction of fluid and particle transport. You can consider realistic geometries like the device or a mouth, throat, or lung model, and can be validated with in vitro or in vivo data. So I've got a couple of animations here. So this animation on the top is a prediction of the fluid motion. So it kind of goes in two steps. You predict the fluid motion, and then on top of the fluid motion, you predict the particle motion, and it predicts where it deposits in the mouth, throat, or lung, or what have you. And so focusing a little bit more into dry powder inhalers, CFD has a limitation in that when you predict the motion of these particles, it considers them as point masses. So it can't really consider the complex interactions you see with a dry powder inhaler where you've got large carrier particles and smaller active pharmaceutical ingredient particles. And so there's another type of modeling called discrete element method modeling. And this can consider these complex particle interactions and can be paired with CFD. So I've got a little figure here showing what this kind of simulation looks like, where the large carrier particle in red is striking the surface and the smaller API particles are breaking up. And so to give you a little bit of context on what we've accomplished so far with GDUFA-funded research for DPIs and CFD-DM modeling, in 2018, we funded 2 different grants to Princeton University and University of Sydney to build our capability in this area. And coming back to the focus of this workshop, we funded a grant last year with Oklahoma State University using machine learning methods to then extend the applicability of these CFD-DM models. And so I'll get to that in a bit. But I want to provide a little bit of background on the earlier projects just so you can understand the context of this. So the grants for Princeton and Sydney, they developed models that considered surface and electrostatic forces between these carrier and API particles. And one of the limitations was that they only considered a limited number of particles and used only one representative size for each of the particles. So why would they do that? It's because these simulations take a very long time to run, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But that's where we think that machine learning techniques especially can help with this type of simulation. So this is just a visualization of what this simulation looks like, where the carrier and API particles are moving through an idealized DPI. For the Princeton grant, they developed a model for product meclidinium bromide, vilanterol triphenetate, and they considered a variety of cases by varying numbers and masses of carrier and API particles, and also considering 1 or 2 blisters, because this DPI has a 2 blister design where you have one API and one blister and the other API and the other. So by using the simulation, they realized that even if you had the same API in both blisters, your product was improved by having those 2 blisters just because of the additional interactions, the way the particles strike each other. It kind of promoted breakup of these particles. For this Sydney grant that we had awarded, they developed a model for tiotropium bromide inhalation powder. And this is using a capsule-based design, so a little bit different design where you have a capsule inside that's pierced to a certain diameter. And depending on how wide that hole is, it can really affect your product performance. So they looked at different aperture sizes and found that for an aperture size of about 1.3, that tended to kind of optimize the system. And so what are the challenges of CFD-DM modeling? So I alluded to this. We have very long simulation times on the order of days or weeks. And this can slow down model development and execution, of course, can require significant resources and can maybe limit access because not everybody has the money to pay for these resources. It can reduce the number of particles that are injected so they're not as realistic, and can reduce the capacity to conduct parameter sensitivity analyses because the simulations take so long. And other challenges lie with particle model parameterization and validation. We don't often have the particle size distributions for both the carrier and the API particles, and also quantifying the surface energy can be quite difficult. So coming back to the grant that I mentioned earlier with Oklahoma State University that we awarded last year, they're planning on using machine learning to accelerate these predictions. And this is just a quote from the project showing what they're aiming to do. But really what I want to focus here is that the machine learning method is intended to develop these reduced order models. So the idea here is you run a number of CFD-DM simulations to build sort of a training data set. And then you can train this reduced order model to provide predictions of the powder emitted from the DPI. So you can still get the benefit of these highly mechanistic, computationally expensive simulations, but perhaps in a much faster time. And we're about halfway through the grant. I don't have any significant results to show yet. They're still kind of developing the CFD-DM part, but I just wanted to highlight this effort. This was something I found in literature that I thought was really interesting. This was improving the numerical solver efficiency itself. So a key bottleneck to CFD is the size of the computational mesh. So the way CFD works is you take the three-dimensional space and you divide it up into a number of smaller three-dimensional domains. And depending on how many of the smaller domains you have, it increases your computational time. So this case, they were using something called direct numerical simulation, which is known to be highly accurate, but very computationally expensive. So I thought this was a really interesting figure because if you look at the top row, so this is the traditional method of predicting this fluid motion. And you can see the size of the mesh was 2048 by 2048. And you can see how over time how it shifts. So the second row is showing this linear interpolation model. This is using a convolutional neural network technique. And they found an 80-fold decrease in time spent to run the simulation. And you can see that compared to that top row, the motion of the fluid was pretty similar. So it looked pretty good. The bottom row was just using the older technique, but with the mesh that was 64 by 64, because that middle row was 64 by 64, and so was the bottom. But you can see that at first it's okay, but in time it degrades. So by using this machine learning technique, they were able to preserve that accuracy, but to reduce the time. And this is something I'd like to focus on that was an older effort, a grant that was awarded in 2016. And they were interested in looking at intersubject variability for asthmatic patients. And they used this principal component analysis and k-means clustering analysis technique to look at 248 different CT scans from asthmatic patients, looking at functional and structural variables. And they identified 4 clusters. And the reason they did this is that clinicians have hypothesized for years that asthma really is not just one disease, that it's really a set of kind of different phenotypes within that disease. So the hypothesis here was if you use this machine learning technique, you can identify these relevant clusters that capture some aspect of the intersubject variability. So after they developed these clusters, they took it a step further using CFD. They predicted the deposition and using 10 different models, so 8 from the 4 clusters and 2 healthy models. And I provide a few more technical details here. But what I want you to focus on here is that they looked at subject-specific flow rates and monodispersed particle injections, so just one particle at a time. And the results here were quantified for the different lobes in the lung. So your lung actually has 5 different lobes for anyone who is not aware of that. And they looked at healthy female, healthy male, and 4 different clusters. And the results here are in 4 different graphs. You've got 1 micrometer particles, 2 micrometer, 4, and 8 micrometers. And according to the different lobes, you can see healthy female, which was HF, healthy male was HM, and the 4 different clusters. You can see a wide variability depending on particle size, the lung lobe, and the cluster type. So I think that they capture at least a lot of the variability of asthma. Now, was it perfect? Do we know if they captured all the variability? I don't think we've really confirmed that yet, but thought it was an interesting technique to try to handle this problem of how do you capture intersubject variability. So I just want to conclude the talk. I talked a little bit about mechanistic modeling for OIDPs and how it's used to accelerate product development and facilitate approval. I talked about how CFD and CFD-DM modeling techniques are used to predict regional deposition. And I talked about how AI and ML techniques may be used to reduce the number of CFD or CFD-DM simulations and to improve numerical solver efficiency and then characterize intersubject variability. And I've got acknowledgements from a lot of people who have contributed to this across FDA and across industry and academia. And just want to close with this reflection on why we do what we do at OGD. It's all about patient access and making sure that everybody has access to the medicine, because if the medicine isn't available to you, it's not doing its intended purpose. And I have references for later reading.
Thank you, Dr. Wallinger, for those excellent insights into the regulatory science research activities that are being conducted in the Office of Generic Drug Products. Now, closing out our session is our last speaker, Dr. Liang Zhao. Dr. Liang Zhao is professor and vice chair in the Department of Bioengineering and Therapeutics, and also at the School of Pharmacy and Medicine in the University of California, San Francisco. And he'll be sharing with us the transformative potential of generative AI approaches and his experiences.
Thanks, Raj, for the intro. Also, feel fortunate to do a presentation right after Ross. Ross shows so always why the innovation matters. So this shows many examples from ORS, OGD, UQMM, being powerhouse of innovations. So I have been always feeling proud to be part of that before. So my topic today is using generative AI to support regulatory applications, product lifecycle management, lessons learned solutions. So being a faculty today allows me some room for being critical. So I will be very honest and to share terms of opinion that by living in both FDA and in the academia, previous in industry, how I feel and how my vision goes regarding the new era of AI. So I don't want to waste too much time in terms of talking AI. Now it's in every corner of a drug R&D, from drug discovery to development and to post-marketing. So not only us, every industry, every discipline is being transformed by AI. So if we look at regulatory science from last century, initially, FDA is mainly about in the early 20th century, FDA is mainly about regulating drug safety. Then actually the efficacy and then clinical pharmacology come into the role in late 20th century. About bioequivalence actually started from bioequivalence. You cannot just say same amount of drug administered won't always lead to the same efficacy. Then early 2000, where we witnessed the booming of biotech, including like a gene therapy, then FDAs have to cope with the changes, knowledge gaps for biotech development. And now, so AI is in the picture. So we have to face, the gaps that AI has created, also ethics and the database challenges, et cetera, et cetera. So if we look at today's FDA, actually, it's, I'm trying to understand what will be the potential new initiative from FDA after the administration change. So I did read a paper from JAMA. It's written by the commissioner and center director. Both are faculties. They raised 3 key questions. So why does it take 10 years to get drug approved? Why are children chronic diseases so prevalent? How can regulators adapt to meet the challenges facing clinicians today? Those are the 3 questions they have raised. They also provided certainly solutions. You can see 2 of the solutions are related to AI and big data, unleashing AI, harnessing big data. I think here big data mainly refer to real-world data, the conversion data to evidence for regulatory decision-making. So that's no surprise after this when you see, you know, how, to phase out animal studies in the farm tox package, and then we see FDA using ELSA to within the firewall to increasing the work efficiency. You know, it's understandable when you see the solutions that way. So also we have been seeing a paradigm shift in drug development. So we've been talking about model-informed drug development. We are also promoting model-integrated evidence. MIE had the pilot meeting to discuss when to use and how to use model-generated data as evidentiary information for generic drug approval, and taking advantage of all the information knowledge learned from new drug development and the post-marketing stage. Really want to make science-driven regulatory decision-makings. Now we see AI emergence. In the Bay Area, so I've been telling people, we used to be the cool guys who know how to do the modeling. Now you guys are taking the hype. So by the way, OpenAI just across the street from us. So we are doing some collaboration that could make some significant changes in the field. And we are also seeing big data. We're also seeing industry adoption, almost every industry, you know, from today's workshop, you see most of the companies are thinking how to adopt AI, where the value creation of AI, where the biggest value creation, and where they can invest to maximize the return on investment. So if we talk about the big data, real-world data and the real-world evidence, here the picture we have drawn later on. So I think currently it's more like an individual understanding where is the biggest benefit. We highlighted in the red font to develop virtual trial population, use external control or historical control to serve as actually a control arm in the new drug development for especially for rare disease and oncology. In generic drug, later on you will see the research priorities for year 2026, also including real-world evidence portion. So I think real-world data can critically develop virtual trial to assess drug performance, for example, generic versus new drugs. So if we take a very science-driven approach that can make the approval process lean and also gain earlier access for the general public to a generic drug, so can we monitor its real performance? I think so far it's been great. So lately, actually in this year, I was also one of the authors in a paper published in Nature Medicine, talking about like international partnerships after witnessing so many common things happening, not only for drug development, but also for prognosis, diagnosis, digital health, every discipline. People are seeing the same thing, same challenge regarding the intended use, how to develop model, how to evaluate AI approach, how to reduce bias, bring equity into the AI model, and how to keep updating the model, and in terms of post-marketing monitoring. Regarding real-world evidence, in this year in the DIA meeting, I think the commissioner also stressed on this. He says we have to be willing to learn from data other than randomized controlled trial data. We can learn from real-world data. We can learn from synthetic controls now in national giant EHR records. We never had access to do impeccable patient matching before. I think that also signify what's going to happen, what could be part of important component in drug R&D. Let's get back to the GDUFA science research. I took this from the current posting for the priority initiatives for fiscal year 2026. They're regarding with AI, I think there are 3 areas have been mentioned. The first one is to use real-world evidence for post-market surveillance. The second one is quantitative analysis and modeling approaches that facilitate regulatory assessment. The third is AI machine learning tools for prospective applicant, which is very interesting. Can the prospective applicant use some AI tools to assess their package even before they submit the package to FDA? Can they use the tools to assess the completeness? Certainly the dream can go even wilder. Can they, we have an AI tool to review the package ahead of time? That's another question. So regarding the first point, real-world evidence for post-marketing evidence associated with that, actually FDA already have an advancing RWE program. The goal is to identify approaches for generating RWE that meet regulatory requirement, to develop agency processes, how, not only about knowledge, but also decision-making processes. And the third goal is to promote awareness. Can all industry be aware of such approaches, such mechanism you can take advantage for your drug R&D? However, I think when we are doing that, we see many different variations of machine learning approaches for each of the scenarios. The challenge is that how to qualify an AI tool, what will be the best benchmarking data, even for a chatbot. How would you trust the responses from the chatbot if you post a question to, for example, GPT? If you develop another regulatory GPT, how would you be sure that your chatbot is better than the current one? So I think the most important question is to how and when can we use AI approach, and for what scenario can we draw a regulatory decision tree? Actually, through 30, there's a research topic for that. We fortunately got invited to the final submission. So we really think it's such an important topic for the world to learn and to know. We leveraged OpenAI and Stanford colleagues in the effort, got approved, but just got message that CERSI not getting new funding, so it's taken back. I hope someone can pick it up later on. I think it's a really important topic. Unfortunately, we are not getting the funding. So the second priority initiative is the quantitative analysis and modeling tools using AI. I think Russ just gave a very good overview how in the past OGD has taken the initiative to invest and gain the benefit by using in the quantitative modeling tools. It's one of the pioneer in the field. So, however, here are the observations. I see most of the active investment, like millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, has been invested in drug discovery, which is not visible to FDA. There are lots of hope in drug discovery, but I personally think there's also huge limitations given the lack of current data. So we will publish a paper later on, mainly to criticize the drug docking. So we know AlphaFold has been very reliable tool to predict the protein 3D structure. However, one step further, so if you want to predict a small molecule interaction docking to a protein, so we evaluated different approaches. The latest approaches just found it's not there yet. So we'll publish that one. Hopefully, that can give some different voice in the hype. Then people be more willing to invest more in this area. So for drug development, the value creation many states in the protocol writing, trial design, synthesized external control arm, and automated study report writing. I think everyone is investing in this, taking advantage of that. For the external control, there are quite a few products in the oncology area and in rare disease urology has been approved by using external control, using historical data. So I see big value creation over there. However, I mentioned that today, I want to be a little bit critical. I don't see not much happening in terms of conventional areas like pharmacometrics and biostat. Usually for dose selection, dosing regimen optimization, and also even for cohort screening, I haven't personally seen a big advantage that machine learning has gained us yet. So the conventional approaches have done a very good job, reasonable job, if the data is not large enough, it's not of a high dimensionality, high feature. That's my observation. So here is a future outlook. I think the low-hanging fruit, you will see it very soon, including from my lab. You will see automated data construction, model development. I think PyDarwin highlights one of the late advancement in terms of automated model development and report writing. Certainly report writing has been everywhere, using AI. The second low-hanging fruit I'm coming is that it's becoming more efficient tool in handling dimensionality and high-feature data. I see in FDA, especially in the generic drug realm, the formulation competitions, we have so abundant data, CMC parameters, manufacturing parameters, dissolution profiles following multiple conditions, human subject characteristics, including genetics. We have loads of PK profiles and clinical responses. I think the data is there, but it needs to be mined. The AI or machine learning approaches can really lead to a difference in terms of a future landscape of regulatory mechanisms. I think yesterday, Dr. Lamberg shared what is going to happen in the next 10 years. I hope you can dive into this, talk deeper, to see, AI can really benefit many other areas. And we are also seeing multi-agentic automation modeling practice. Many companies, we see, we just heard a presentation from Certara, right? The multi-agentic model is really, as a concept, is really prevalent in the field. I'm seeing all these things happening in the near future. So what is gonna be a little bit of further future? not only me, I feel there are many scientists, certainly including industry in the field, they are thinking, can we have more regulatory specific AI? Can we mock a regulatory meeting? For example, pre-ANDA meeting for new drugs, IND meeting, and a phase 2 meeting. Before you come into FDA, can you actually conduct a meeting with the AI to increase the meeting quality and the meeting outcomes? Again, for some questions may not need to pose to FDA. There are probably already a standard answer. So can we use AI agent to preview the application packages? It's one of the GDUFA priorities, right? Can we make things even further? Can we hire an AI reviewer first before the package to FDA? Can we assemble a virtual drug development team? That's being talked in some of the Science Nature papers. I think it's in the near, not too far, it could be there, in the companies, instead of hiring too many consultants, can just, have a virtual environment for multi-AI agents playing different roles. Could be a clinician, clinical pharmacologist, formulation scientist, pharmacometrician, or modeler. At the end, I just want to share, this is my last slide, about technical perspective, the current understanding. There is a retrieval augmented generation. It's one of the fancy term. Actually, it changed the game a lot currently. So in the past 2-3 years, people thinking about a domain-specific word or language model. People later on found that the fundamental model, like a GPT, they can easily beat the domain-specific models if they can be pinpointed to find the right information. Actually, the essence of it, the context engineering to counter context rot. If you have too long conversation with the AI, it lose focus. So I think that single improvement can gain lots of benefit. I think the soul of large language model stay in the latent layer. Even though human designed that, but we don't know what it is actually doing. I think there's a hope, a limit, and emerging intelligence from the latent layer that haven't been fully understood. Some people say we will never get to an AGI because of the current setup for the large language model, because you are trying to predict the next token. Then later on, you don't know what's going on, whether the AI is having a too good a memory to collect all the information in the world. You think it's new, actually it's not new. There's no emerging intelligence. Some people say, yes, given the integration of the knowledge, there are some new intelligence. So I personally don't believe large language model could lead to AGI. So let's see, let's keep investing on that. So at the end, I really appreciate, the AI cannot play by itself. Machine learning cannot really play by itself. It's data sharing. And sometimes you have to work against the legal stuff, make something within the firewall. So the take-home message is transforming everything. Should be coupled, AI should be coupled with big data from real world. I think the context engineering, the key in the current status quo. Agents is next, multi-agent, optimization of a multi-agent system is the next. So new initiative from FDA will be organically aligned with modern technology process. We need to be flexible and always cope with the dynamics. With that, I want to thank many people given the time, so you can read later on. Thank you very much. That's my talk.
Thank you, Professor Zhao, for those perspectives and the future outlook. I'm pretty sure some of those would make for a very good discussion during the panel discussion. This brings the presentation portion of our session 5 to a close. I would like to again thank all the presenters for the very excellent talks. We will now break for lunch and we will reconvene at 1:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we will join the panel discussion led by Professor Joga Goburu as the moderator. Thank you, everyone.
Recording stopped.